Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. And today I'm going to be taking a little bit off of the beaten path here, and I want to quickly highlight something on the Solar Killshot Action Network, or solarkillshot.org, where some time ago, towards the end of last year, a member going by Christopher Gannon joined this group, and what he had to offer was really something incredible and something that some of us really needed in that specific time. And going forward, today I am 171 days into this challenge here. And what this is, it's a routine group where basically we hold each other accountable to our goals and what we want to accomplish in various things. And this can be really small goals, it can be big goals, and it's also catered towards what our current lifestyle is. So if you're working a job, there's not as much expected, and if you've got a lot going on, things can always work around that. And it can look intimidating at first, so this is mostly speaking towards SKAN members that are already present. So I know there's been some interest in some other people, but some people have not really reached out. But this has honestly been an incredible experience, and it has formed relationships and bonds with the few of us who have taken part in this challenge, and has really helped out, especially me as being Gen Z in my 20s, well, later 20s at this point. Oof. For younger generations, it also especially helps when we're going through these chaotic circumstances and life-changing circumstances in life. I can't even understate how much of a benefit this has been in creating consistency in one's life and basically going through events of chaos with people that you know and trust and moving forward with them. So this is officially called the Solar Praxis group through SKAN, and we do daily check-ins, and then we also have weekly calls where we basically just give the rundown, what's been going good, what's been going bad, what we might need help on, and where our current goals are at. So again, you can create small goals, you can take baby steps. That's pretty much been the whole journey, is just taking small steps that eventually cascade into bigger, life-changing goals. And especially depending on, well, for me, it has really helped with my creative endeavors, projects, and other things related to that. So I just wanted to quickly give that a really big shout out, because that has been honestly just incredible. I cannot understate how helpful the resources and the mentorship has been there. And we all like to have fun as well. Now I guess I'll get into the geophysical and solar side of things here, where things have been, again, pretty quiet. However, we have had the continued coronal hole streams here, and this coronal hole that is going to be facing us directly here in the next couple days has just been slowly growing in size. So we have minor coronal hole influence coming from the southern side, where we see the solar wind speed has been picking up, and this really shows how the BZ angle really reflects what kind of things we could see here. So on this red part of the chart here, we can see above the dotted line the BZ has held strong, and so we've had very minor, pretty much no turbulence happening in the magnetic field. However, if that was more south-facing during the solar wind pickup here, then we probably would be seeing maybe some elevated stress in the magnetic field. And even though, again, there's only the coronal hole that is pretty much doing anything right now, we could see potential effects from that where normally we would not, completely due to the weakening of the magnetic field. So even from very minor events happening from the sun, we have seen extraordinary effects happening to the magnetic field, as well as mid to lower latitude auroral displays, which, especially when I'm on X trying to follow some of these people, there's a lot of aurora watchers on there that do not know what is happening with the magnetic field, and so they would actually be pretty much jumping for joy when they see huge magnetic turbulences happening or solar storms happening, even though there is a lot of risks associated with that in the technological age that we live in. So that being said, there hasn't been a whole lot going on. If we take a look at the sunspots really quick here on the magnetogram, and this one is colored, kind of representing the magnetic polarities of these things. So there's really not much. We got tiny sunspots with nothing going on, and even on the right side on the departing limb, we can see these moderate sized sunspots do have a little bit of magnetic complexity. Not much though, because they're still pretty stable, but that's pretty much what we got going on there. So when we take a look at volcano discovery here, going into the 20th and looking at the 19th, things have been more or less the same. Central and South America volcanoes have still been having these continued blasts happening, where most of the activity has been. And Indonesia has taken a little bit of a backseat. There's still volcanic unrest happening at many of the same locations, but there hasn't been anything major going on there. And then I was looking at here, there was another volcano location coming from the Alaskan Peninsula. And if I could find it here, this one here. So it looks like they were having some trouble with data collection gaps following power outages, as well as necessary repairs that needed to be done down here. So that is definitely an ongoing battle in the volcanic world, where it's only really been up until recent years, especially when we have satellites now, where we can actually view volcanism at a global scale. So as long as there's not too much overcast happening, we can pretty much see if there's any sort of ash plume or relevant activity happening anywhere across the globe, which of course has not been the case for the majority of time. So that is mostly what we see in the gaps here. In terms of more populated areas is where we see a more consistent kind of backlog on these historical events. So pretty much now we are able to actually see what's happening with volcanoes. However, especially in some of these areas that are a little bit more distant and harder to get to, there's a lot of upkeep and maintenance that happens with these scientific instruments. So I'd imagine generally, especially up here in the Aleutian Island chain of Alaska, there's probably more going on volcanically than is being reported, just because it's a little bit harder to get those readings up here. And with that, I will just kind of go into the general earthquake activity. There hasn't been anything major going on. We see a couple new deep earthquakes over here. And let's see, we got a mid-range 4 hitting Japan, kind of in between the previous activity that was striking around here. And over here in the Philippines, still looking pretty quiet, but again, there has been some more volcanic unrest happening. So we have more than a couple different locations here with some sort of activity, but again, nothing major. So that's pretty much all good to go. And going here into the US, we see a lot of the same activity being hit. If we just drag it down to the last day, we still see lots of tremors going on down here in Texas and Oklahoma. And then we do still see this little stack of tremors here northwest of the San Francisco Bay. And then with that, we can kind of combine what we see happening there with the Pacific Northwest map here, the tremor map, recording the slow slip events going on the northern side, where it looks like it is a little bit quieter than I would have suspected. Honestly, I would have thought we would be seeing something more reminiscent of what we had going on at the end of last month, where we have more consistent activity here with several hundred events happening per day, but that's not really the case, so that could be slightly building up to maybe some more activity we could see going off the coast, potentially in the 5 magnitude range here in this kind of quiet area. So it could be something to look out for. But other than that, there hasn't been much here. We had a 5 over here in the Virgin Islands. We just take the rings down a little bit there. That's pretty much been the only notable activity going on besides the ongoing volcanic unrest in Central and South America. So pretty much the entire Ring of Fire has been slowly lighting up a little bit more in recent years, and that is another thing that I'm trying to get to the bottom of when going back here to this website. So when we take a look at the historical data section here, that's definitely what I'm trying to put together more or less, is more of a clear and complete picture of any sort of trends or patterns going on in especially recent years, as again we have the weakening of the magnetic field, which does not just mean more auroral activity and potential for solar events to disturb the power grid or blackout events in internet services and data centers, so on and so forth. There is also a major solar forcing factor, which does include the climate itself, the ocean currents, and pretty much everything else, including earthquakes, especially earthquakes and volcanoes, as those solar particles are able to penetrate deeper into the atmosphere and even go down into the mantle, where it does affect a lot of these same things. So with all that, I think that'll pretty much about wrap it up for today. And, with the massive scope that I'm trying to go for here, it is a little bit harder to be fully consistent and get ahead of everything. But again, I'm trying my best, and improvements will always be happening. So with that, hope you all enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you all in the next.